Politics Matters. Welcome to Politics Matters. Today we'll be talking to the Labour leader in the House of Lords, Baroness Angela Smith. Let's hear her views that matter to you. Politics Matters. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to Politics Matters, a weekly show where we bring different politicians to your homes to talk about issues that matter to you. We're delighted that today we've got the Labour leader in the House of Lords, Baroness Angela Smith, and we're going to be talking about some of her experiences in politics and some of those issues that you may be concerned with. Angela, as I said, you're currently the leader of the Labour Party in the House of Lords. You've previously been a minister, you've been an MP. Can you tell the viewers of KTV, how you got into politics and some of your experiences?
I've always thought I got involved quite gradually. Behind us here is this leaflet here, is the first leaflet when I first stood for the council at the age of 22. So I stood for the local council then. I think there were a couple of things. One, I had quite strong views on things. I wanted to do something, but didn't really know how to. I was also, it seems hard to believe now, quite shy.
Yep.
So although I joined the Labour Party, I would be the last one to speak up at a meeting or say anything. So I look back at the Angela Smith or the Angela Evans as I was then and think, gosh, she was very shy. If she'd known what I'm doing now, she might have been quite scared. But the encouragement I got from friends and family and the Labour Party as a whole to do more and to be more confident was what's led me to where I am today. So I got involved gradually and slowly and with support from friends and family.
You were the private secretary to Gordon Brown when he was the Prime Minister. You used to attend cabinet meetings. How does being in government and being in opposition in the House of Lords, how different is it?
Oh, very. In one you make decisions, and the other you can try and influence decisions. But to be in government, if you want to do anything, if you want to achieve something, you want to make a difference, you've got to be in government. You've got to be the ones making the decisions. And all the marches you go on, all the petitions you sign, they try to influence decisions, but actually you have to be in government to do so, or in charge in local authority. So there's a big difference. And also for me, it's a difference between then I was in the House of Commons and now in the House of Lords. And that's two very different roles as well. In the House of Commons, you are a geographical member, you've got a defined constituency, you take up individual issues. And here you're more focused on policy, on challenging the government, holding the government to account. So they're two very different roles, but I couldn't say which, but they're two different roles. Between being in the Commons or the Lords, I couldn't say which I prefer. Between being in government and opposition, you need to be in government. Yeah.
Angela, one of the things you said about being shy, and I'm going to talk about Parliament representing different people, whether it be women, whether it be minorities of any sort.
Yeah.
I found in my own life that generally women tend not to talk themselves up, bang their own drum, whereas men tend to gloss over all their deficiencies. We were talking earlier before we came onto the air that women have had the right to vote for 90 odd years. But do you think we've gone far enough with only 29% of MPs being women, only 24% of women being in the House of Lords?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it has been harder for women, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
We're 50% of the population, and yet you're still underrepresented. I was the 216th woman ever to be elected to Parliament back in 1997. There's been more MPs called David or John than there had been women at that time. So I think that's pretty shocking. And so Parliament really has to be more reflective of the community as a whole. And it's not doing that if it excludes ethnic minorities, if it excludes people on grounds of gender, on age, there's a whole range of credit, and class, If you look at the background of MPs and peers, not so many come from the same kind of background I come from, which is a very working class background. It's curiously, I think probably quite a large percentage on the Labour benches in the House of Lords, because of the background they've had for the Labour Party and the trade union movement. But we need to have a parliament that is more representative, more reflective of Parliament as society as a whole.
But I think the Labour Party is actually doing quite well when it comes to women MPs. I think it's 43%, which is not quite 50 yet, but it's much better than some of the other parties. Other than the Green Party, you have 100% with one MP.
They don't have many MPs. We're doing better. But I think in all these areas, we have to, at every stage and every election, just take stock and look at our candidates, look at the people we're selecting, look at the communities they represent, and say, are we doing the best we can in making sure that as a party, we better reflect our voters and the communities we serve.
Andrew, many of the viewers of KTV are from the Sikh community or the Punjabi community. It could be Hindus, Muslims, etc., watching KTV. And one of the things that we've been grappling with within the Sikh community is we have no Sikh MPs currently. We had 5 at one time, and we had several in the Labour Party, but currently we don't have any. And in contrast, in Canada, got 5 ministers that are Sikhs, and a turban-wearing Sikh being the defence minister. And people make these comparisons with the Justin Trudeau government. But we've only got 3 members of the House of Lords as well. This is something that we're struggling with, but as the Labour leader in the House of Lords, and this applies to all the political parties, what can be done about getting better representation for minorities?
I'm glad you're struggling with it, because that means you're aware of it and you're pushing it and you're driving on the issue, and I'm really pleased on that, because as the Labour leader I want to lead here a party that is, as I said, more reflective of the community. One of the problems of being in opposition, you don't get many opportunities for appointments, and since I've been leader there's been 1 appointment. And I don't know when the next ones will be. So I think we have to have a longer term strategy of the kind of Labour Party we want, both in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Now, the Sikh community are much better represented in local government. Now, some of those people have got local government experience. Why are we doing better in local government than we are nationally? Now, I know we have more councillors, but there must be people there coming forward who are good. And for me, what I want to see in the House of Lords is not just people say, I can represent my community, but I'm a representative of my community and I can represent the country as a whole. And I can act in the interest of the country as a whole. And I think it would be nice to see when we see more people coming forward to the House of Lords and putting their names forward for Parliament, to see more Sikhs coming forward, and more Chinese representatives, and more younger people, and more working class people. That's, I think, a failure of politics if you're not addressing a wider community of people who vote for you and people who want to vote for you.
Andrew, one of the things, if you look at the BAME community, is that we've tried to look at it in terms of, say, religions. It appears that the Hindu community has got a reasonable representation in both the Commons and the Lords. The Jewish community have a long history of being well established. Disraeli was the Prime Minister. But actually, one of the questions that seriously is being asked is there still discrimination that's preventing people coming through, whether it be MPs, whether it be Lords, or whether it be any of the political parties?
I suspect not so much now. Whether there has been in the past is difficult to say, but then probably not so much now. But as we've lost MPs and we've got a small number of peers, we haven't had the same opportunities to do so. And I would say to the Sikh community, particularly women Sikh people who are watching tonight, please come forward, show us your skills, show us what you can do. I was listening to a radio programme and something you said earlier struck me about women being less confident. I'm sure that's the same in the Sikh community as it is in any other community. And it was a woman who had a very senior job, and when the job was advertised, she was saying she thought about applying for it and thought, well, actually, there's about 1/3 of that job I can't do. I'm not going to apply for it. And a friend took her aside and said, no, but come on. A man would say, I can do 2/3 of that job. I'm going to put my name forward for it. So if you have members of the Sikh community, I'd say particularly women Sikhs, wouldn't I? You'd expect me to. What can you do? If you think, I can do about half of that, okay, how do you make sure you can do the other half? And they're the people I'd like to see coming forward, because they're the ones who've got that drive, that ambition. And I think we need those people here with drive and ambition.
Just to share with you, Angela, that one of the things about all the Sikh MPs we have all been men so far.
But you've got some good Sikh women councillors. I follow some of them on Twitter,
We do.
and I think there's some pretty impressive women out there.
Yeah.
So I want to see more of them.
And what we've been doing, and you might have followed this on
Yeah.
Twitter, we ran a campaign called hashtag
Yes.
350 Sikh
Yeah.
Women. And we've just started this week a global campaign. So we started off with the first woman leader of the House in Canada is a Sikh woman.
Excellent. I read about her.
That's
Yes,
right.
I know. Yes.
So that
of
was the
course.
first one. So we
Yeah.
thought there's things that women haven't achieved in this country but have in places like Canada and America, Australia. Yeah.
And role models are important.
That's
Where I come from at home, my home in Basildon, I was the first person in our sort of little area to go on to do a degree and go to university. And then suddenly, a group of girls 5 or 6 years younger than me all started going to university. And we're convinced it's because their mothers said to them, if her around the corner can do it, so can you. And it's having that role model that drives you and your family to be as successful as somebody else.
One of the issues, I'm going to try and focus more on the Lords here.
Yeah.
One of the issues that often comes up is reform of the House of Lords. And sometimes you hear things about should age limits be introduced, a bit like the bishops or the judges. You sometimes hear about there isn't enough regional representation in the House of Lords. Do you think that we will, in our lifetime, see major reform of the House of Lords?
I think we'll see reform, but the history of this country tends to be reforms quite gradual.
Yeah.
And at this moment, I'm going to go
I
and
know.
vote for some reforms. I think that's the vote about to take place.
And just to share with the viewers of KTV, we've just had the bell sound. In fact, it's going off now, which is saying that you must go and vote. It doesn't matter what the politicians are doing, they have to leave and they have to go and vote. So Baroness Angela Smith, the leader of the Labour Party in the Lords, has gone to vote. She'll be back in a couple of minutes and we'll be right back to you. Politics Matters. Welcome back. Just before we went for a break, you heard the bell sound, and Angela's, I think, got her breath back from what we
Just
were talking
about.
Angela, this is the sort of thing that happens within Parliament. You know, the bell sounds and politicians disappear off to vote.
Yes.
How does all this work? You know, I hear this thing about you have to vote or you don't have to vote. How does it all work?
How it works? Well, during the person who's running the bill, sort of our front benchers on that, they will work through as a team and we'll look at the issues. And it's different to the Lords and the Commons, where we think we should actually say to the government, have a look at this and think again. If they don't accept that, then we may vote to say, we really think you should look again. So we've got a TV screen in the corner here, and shortly it'll tell me what the vote is. This one was on support for students. You know, if you're at university, there is support there, but if you're actually doing an apprenticeship or a different kind of qualification, there's very little support. So we're trying to get some more support for those students, and that's what the vote is here just now. So, and then when the bell goes, you've got your piece of paper, you've got the sort of day planned out, and you know how you're voting.
Andrew, one of the things I was going to talk to you about was reform of the House of Lords. You know, people look at the House of Lords and they say, oh, it's too big, people are too old. What sort of reform, you know, people talk about an age limit possibly coming in. What sort of reforms do you think will be possible in our lifetimes?
Yeah, I always slightly worry about the age limit, and I realise none of us go on forever, but some of our most active and most able peers are people who are in their 80s. And for example, I use Alf Dubs to you, who did the amendment on child refugees. Now, if you had a sort of cut, Alf is now, I think, 82, 83. I really want to see him go because he's getting older. And yet there are others, perhaps in their 50s, who don't play as an active a role, not playing such a part. So whilst age may form part of the reason for sort of trying to reduce the numbers, it has got too large, then it won't be the sole reason as far as I'm concerned. So I think you have to look at why the House has got so large. And basically, David Cameron came in, he brought in a coalition government, rewarded his Liberal Democrat partners and gave them lots of peerages, so their numbers inflated. Then when they fell out, they came over to the opposition, and he had to appoint more government peers to up his numbers again. And so under David Cameron, we had more appointments per year than any other Prime Minister since there have been life peerages. and a far higher proportion were for the government side and not for the opposition or crossbenchers. So that's given this imbalance we have at the moment, which I don't think is acceptable.
Angela, I'm going to talk to you about Brexit and the House of Lords.
Yeah.
Obviously, in more recent times, the House of Lords has been in the news for, we're in new territory here with Brexit. Do you think what's gone on the last few weeks in terms of the House of Lords and challenging hard Brexit has enhanced the image of the House of Lords?
Probably depends which side of the argument you're on, if you're honest.
Yeah.
But what we did on the Brexit bill was no different to what we do on other bills. It just came under public scrutiny a lot more. Now, I think people sometimes misunderstand what the House of Lords can do. We're an unelected House.
Yeah.
Therefore, we don't have the final say on legislation at all. What we can do is ask the House of Commons to look at an issue again, and it's for the elected House to have the final say. So on Brexit, there were two issues. There were a number we raised with the government, but there were two that we thought were so important that we voted. And interestingly, with massive majorities from all corners of the House. So that was the issue about the rights of EU nationals who are living here, working here, have their lives here, that we should say, yes, you're welcome. And make that clear, give them some clarity about their futures. But also, I think for us, Parliament has to have a say on what happens at the end of the process. We can't just wave Theresa May off and say, come back in 2 years' time and tell us how you've got on, and whatever you say, that's fine. We thought there had to be better parliamentary scrutiny and a parliamentary vote. And so those are the two issues we asked the House of Commons to look at again. They said no. So we could have carried on voting all night, we could have delayed it by a few hours, but what we've done is we've said, right, they don't want it in the bill, but we're not going to let those issues drop, and we've got more motions to discuss it. So it's interesting how people perceive the Lords and what we do. I think a lot of people thought, well, yes, you're speaking for me, and I hope that what people saw was us doing our job of challenging, of using arguments. You won't get away with sort of broad platitudes here. You have to make a case. So I hope people saw that.
I think what it did do was to highlight those two issues in particular, because they are important issues, irrespective of which side of the divide you're on in terms of whether you voted for or against Brexit. In terms of the Brexit issue, clearly a massive issue that affects everyone. What do you think will be the role of the House of Lords in the next few years in terms of what the Prime Minister negotiates and what Parliament or the House of Lords can do?
I think for the House of Lords, what's going to be really key for us is what the government is very pompously calling the Great Repeal Bill, which it isn't. And what the Great Repeal Bill will say, basically, I think it's going to be, look, we're coming out of Europe, but look at all the regulations we've got and all the laws we've got, consumer protection, environment protection, employment rights, human rights, social rights, all those issues that we've brought into our law from Europe, and we had a say in creating them in Europe, we want them in our domestic law. That sounds like it was quite straightforward. It's not. It's terribly complicated. So I think a lot of the detail of that will be work that we're doing here over the next couple of years, and we start it probably, in the next few months, that work will start.
Angela, we're sitting in the Houses of Parliament, and obviously very recently we had the attack here. It doesn't matter which community you come from, people were shocked to see pedestrians mowed down and a police officer who was doing his job stabbed to death. We were talking earlier about the mood within Parliament and how people felt. Perhaps you want to share some of that with KTV viewers.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It was sad. It was very sombre. It was thoughtful. It was very frightening for a lot of people at the beginning because nobody really knew what was happening. I was sitting in this office with the window behind me and was told to get out in the corridor away from the window. And so we were in the corridor here. And nobody knew if this was just one attacker, or if this was a number of attackers were in the building, or was this a distraction, so a further attack could take place. So there was that uncertainty, and the police had to sort of obviously check the whole building to make sure the building was secure and people were safe. So I think uncertainty, and some people were together, some were on their own, and there were visitors here as well. So the whole day was very strange, and as the news filtered through of how badly injured the policeman was, and then we saw more information coming through of those being hit on the bridge. And the next day was, I think, a terrible day. Yeah. We went home that night and others couldn't.
Mm.
That hurt.
When these incidents happen, and I remember 9/11, 7/7, even Brexit itself has raised the other side to this, which is hate.
Yeah.
We also see only recently the decision in the European Court of Justice about banning, religious signs, the cross, the hijab, the turban, even the poppy would come under this. Do you think those sorts of, how do we deal with these issues? Because, minority communities or even majority communities in certain parts of the world feel quite frightened.
Yeah. And I think children are often very frightened because they don't understand it at all. Not that any of us can make sense of this. I just think we have to preach, persuade, act in a way that is tolerant and caring about other people. Some of the things I saw on Twitter after those incidents were just terribly shocking. I noticed when I was a Member of Parliament, if we ever had BNP candidates standing, there was always a spike or incidents happened that you weren't, perhaps they reported well, I don't know, but it always seemed more hate-related incidents. And I think we just have to challenge those that spread those words. And we also challenge people who want to blame somebody because they're Muslim or they're Sikh or they're from ethnic minority. We've got to challenge them as well because that's not my impression for people I've known from different faiths and different communities at all. So I don't know how we solve the problem, but I think at every stage we have to challenge hate and put forward tolerance, affection, care and love for fellow citizens.
Just a final question for me, Angela. Part of the government's response to Brexit and hate was publishing the Hate Crime Action Plan last July. And one of the things we pointed out to the Home Secretary and the Secretary of State at DCLG, Sajid Javid, was it brushed out the Sikh community. And we pointed out to the case in North Wales where the dentist got attacked with a machete. And increasingly we're finding out that the focus tends to be on one or two communities, and communities like the Sikh community, which don't tend to shout, they're fairly hardworking, get on with their lives, but they do find these things terribly annoying.
Yeah, and a lot of attacks on Sikhs aren't recorded as attacks on Sikhs, they're just recorded generally. One of the things I think we have to do, A, is to speak up more and be very vocal, but also recognise that this incident here didn't happen in a vacuum. When Jo Cox was murdered, a Member of Parliament going about in her constituency was murdered by somebody. That didn't happen on that day. That happened over a number of times. And I remember election posters, and I work on election leaflets that say, the Labour Party will give homes to immigrants, and trying to be, I don't know, racist undertones in things, and we've all seen them from other parties, and I think we've got to challenge that and we've got to all look at ourselves and say, have we said something or done something? Can we interpret it in that way, even if we didn't mean it in that way? Because there are people that latch on to those kind of views, they extrapolate them, they exaggerate them, and they use them as some kind of warped excuse for their behaviour, and that's why it has to be challenged. You have to speak out. So I want the Sikh community, when they feel threatened or under attack, to say so and stand shoulder to shoulder, all of us together, to say, not in my name.
Angela, it's been a privilege talking to you. I know we sort of finished on a sad note, but
it could be a positive note as well.
It's a positive note in the sense of this is the heart of democracy. And I think communities come together. It doesn't matter what faith, it doesn't matter no faith, it doesn't matter your background when they see things like we've seen recently happening here. So for the viewers at home, clearly we want to bring this programme to you and bring issues that matter to you. Keep watching Politics Matters. Every Wednesday we bring different politicians into your house. Today it's been Angela. Next week it'll be someone else. Try and engage with politicians, whether it's locally, councillors, MPs, members of the European Parliament, since we've still got them, or you want to engage with the heart of democracy here in Parliament. We were in Central Lobby earlier, and I was saying to the cameraman, any person could come here.
Absolutely.
And fill in those green cards and want to see their MP. Wouldn't suggest you'll come one day, but keep watching KTV. Thank you, Angela.
No, thank you. Thank you
Why
very
good you
much.
Why good you Politics Matters.